Greg, thank you so much. Praying for those hostages to be released. Not only does President Trump want to put an end to the war in the Middle East, but he's also focused on Ukraine. The Trump team is heading to Saudi Arabia to meet with Russian and Ukrainian negotiators on ending the war. Here's what National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is expecting.
Number one, it has to be a permanent end to the war, not a temporary end to the war. Number two, this can't be ended on the battlefield. Number three, I talked about how the structure of our aid has to change. And then number four, we're talking about economic integration going forward as the best arbiter of peace. And in terms of long-term military security guarantees, those have to be European-led.
Meanwhile, the far-left media is trying to insinuate that Ukraine won't have an equal seat at the negotiating table. Watch this exchange between NBC and the Ukrainian president.
Have you been given any assurances that Ukraine will have an equal seat at the negotiating table?
So I will never accept any decisions between the United States and Russia about Ukraine. Never. We are thankful for all the support. Unity between USA, in USA, around Ukraine support, bipartisan unity, bipartisan support. We're thankful for all of this, but there is no any leader in the world who can really make a deal with Putin without us, about us.
I mean, we're right now, we're taking a listen. The world is on edge. We don't know what's going to happen with Ukraine. We don't know the next steps for Vladimir Putin. But what I think is really interesting, Griff, and I want to ask you this, get your opinion on this as a foreign correspondent, is the fact that President Trump is going to be holding those meetings, those negotiations in Saudi Arabia, almost as an affront to Iran, bringing the players in, Russia, bringing everybody into Saudi Arabia. What do you think about that?
Well, I think location's very significant. And I think that, you know, it's interesting, since Zelenskyy did that interview, when Trump landed back in Florida, he talked to the reporters there under the wing, as they say, and they asked him, will Zelenskyy be a part of the talks? And they said, he'll be involved. He'll be involved. I don't know what that is, but I think what's significant is not only perhaps the message to Iran there that you mentioned, Sarah, but also the fact that, you know, it's not just not having Ukraine on this trip. Europe's not on it. You know who's most threatened by Putin's ambition? Europe itself. And so it's saying, hey, we don't want Europe there, Ukraine, we're going to start this. Meanwhile, you just had Rubio talking with Netanyahu about zeroing in on Iran. So right now, while we don't know what this is going to look like, and President Trump said under the wing, we don't know what the negotiations are going to look like. Obviously, Zelenskyy, Ukrainians will become a part of it. They're the other half of this equation. However, there's a clear message, I think, being sent to Iran.
I think there is a clear message being sent to Iran, Griff, and Trump says he's working very hard to make peace. He sees Zelenskyy's involvement. He does. And I want you to take a listen to this. Is what President Trump had to say earlier.
We're moving along. We're trying to get a peace with Russia, Ukraine, and we're working very hard on it. It's a war that should have never started.
Do you expect Zelenskyy to be involved in these conversations? What will his role be?
I do. He will be involved, yes.
How do you think that's going to play out, Joe? I mean, do you see Zelenskyy right now getting what he wants from this? Or do you see Zelenskyy taking a step back and saying, whoa, wait a minute, maybe this is President Trump. You know, this is his negotiating tactic. He's going to go straight to Russia. Right. He's going to go straight to the Middle East. He's going to take this. He's going to do his negotiations. And then he's going to turn back to Zelenskyy and say, hey, now you got to either take this deal or decide where you want it to go from here. Because Zelenskyy is going to, I mean, for Zelenskyy, it's about losing people and losing fighters. For Vladimir Putin, it's a continuous push of fighters that it appears like he doesn't even care about what he's losing.
Right. There aren't many fighters left for Ukraine at this point. Whole generations lost. Putin doesn't care if he throws bodies at the problem all day. This isn't Vietnam. There won't be political pressure for him to end the war. He's even utilizing the North Koreans now to fight as well. The plan, reportedly, is that the U.S. is going to sit down with Russia in Saudi Arabia, and they're going to have bilateral talks. When those are done, then bilateral talks will happen between the U.S. and Ukraine. So, okay, this is what Russia's saying, this is what Ukraine is saying, and then everybody gets into a room. Of course, Zelenskyy should have a seat at the table. This is part of his, it's his country. He was invaded wrongly. But in the end, it's just amazing. It's 27 days into this administration, and we're already talking about peace between Ukraine and Russia. If Kamala Harris had won, it would have been perpetual war on the Eastern Front in Ukraine in perpetuity, and money being thrown at the problem from U.S. taxpayers.
Well, and that's why I wanted to go to you quickly, Nicole, because I wanted to get your take on this. I mean, the American people are obviously exhausted with the amount of money that we've been sending to Ukraine. People are frustrated. They want to pull back. This is the first time, that we are seeing real action on this front. Our president's been here. I mean, it's been such a short period, and he's almost resolving this crisis. Well, where do you think this is going to go?
Americans were very supportive of the Ukrainian war when it began because, as Joe just said, Russia invaded them and they needed to push back. But we have not seen that return on investment. They are not winning the war. We don't see an end to the war. So now we need to come to the table and negotiate. As Secretary Hegseth already said, Zelensky's not going to get everything he wants. They're not going to be a part of NATO. They're not going to get the land that they lost in the original invasion, over a decade ago. But they need to come together and make sure that Ukraine feels safe and for future invasions by Russia, because who knows when Donald Trump's out of office, what's going to happen next.
And Zelensky can account for a lot of the money that we've sent to him.